Hi, let's work through prohibited acts based on fair housing.
Civil Rights Act of 1968, Fair Housing Act. Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 is referred to as the Fair Housing Act. It expanded the 1964 legislation to prohibit discrimination in the sale, leasing, advertising sales or rental, financing, or brokerage services providing protection from discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, handicap, and familial status. Sex and gender was added as a protection under the law, with the 1974 amendment later added. People with disabilities and families with children was added as protected classes under the law with the 1988 amendment. Prohibitions under fair housing. Following is a list of activities that are prohibited under fair housing. Refusing to rent, quoting different terms, redlining, discriminatory advertising, denying membership, blockbusting, steering. False statements regarding availability, refusing to rent. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to refuse to rent to anyone based solely on their inclusion in one of the protected classes. Quoting different terms. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to quote a person in a protected class different terms, conditions, or privileges. For example, it is unlawful to quote someone a higher rental rate to discourage them from the rental unit when the difference in rate quoted is due to a person being a member of a protected class. Discriminatory advertising. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has determined It is unlawful to make, print, or publish any statement regarding the sale or rental of a dwelling that indicates a preference, limitation, or discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, disability, familial status, or national origin. So, even if someone appears to be exempt from the law, they cannot discriminate in the advertising. Steering. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to steer a group of people away or towards housing based on being a member in a protected class. Blockbusting. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to coerce owners to sell property below market value by scaring them into fearing that the property will lose value due to members of a protected group moving into the neighborhood and thus profiting by reselling at a higher price. Redlining. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful for lenders and insurance companies to refuse services based on an area being made up of a high concentration of a protected group. Denying membership. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to deny anyone access to or membership in a facility or service due to being a member of a protected class when the membership is related to the sale or rental of housing. False statements. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to falsely claim that housing is no longer available for inspection, sale, or rental in order to avoid selling or renting to a member of a protected class. Do not sidestep fair housing. Our lawmakers were smart when it came to clarifying what acts are prohibited under fair housing. They knew that people would read a law and try to find a clever way around that law. For example, someone trying not to rent to someone might tell that person that the unit isn't available, or they might quote a price ridiculously high to get the person to turn down the rental. However, clarification within the law prevents this from happening. Also, be sure to notice steering, blockbusting, and redlining. Make sure you understand what each means and be able to pick out one definition from another. More importantly, be sure to avoid doing them when practicing real estate. An example of steering would be a Caucasian family that goes into a brokerage. They are from out of town and do not know the area, so they ask for guidance for good housing from the agent. The agent automatically takes the family to the east side of town. Then, a Hispanic family enters the brokerage and makes the same request, but now the agent takes that family to the west side of town. This is steering, very illegal and not acceptable behavior. Blockbusting would be an agent going into a neighborhood and trying to convince owners to sell quick, lower than market price, because a protected class was moving into the area and would drive prices down even more. This was common, let's say in the 1940s, for example. Back then, there were a lot of discrimination against Italian families or Irish families, and unsavory real estate professionals tried to cash in on fear. Blockbusting is illegal and not acceptable behavior. Redlining is when lenders or insurance companies ban doing business in an area just because it is highly populated by people of a certain group. It is called redlining because back before the days of a computer, they would put up a map and literally draw a circle around an area and ban deals within the circle, considering it to be too high of risk. Redlining is illegal and not acceptable behavior. Be careful not to get caught up in any of these activities. You might not think of yourself as someone who would discriminate or hurt others, but what if you have someone call and that person asks, I want to buy a house in an area that is safe. It is not for you to decide where someone should live. The best practice is to present all clients all options. A mantra that I was taught is, there is good housing everywhere for everyone. Only you can decide what is good housing for you.